In this video, I will test the penetration of my 55-pound hickory longbow and stone-tipped river cane arrow on deer skulls to determine if this primitive weapon is capable of killing a deer with a headshot. The points were made of raw Texas flint. They are all hafted with pine sap glue and a heavy wrapping of deer sinew. But first, I must take some practice shots to get warmed up.
And what I'm going to attempt to do is actually shoot this arrow in between the antlers. So that's a young spike buck, so he's going to have a little bit thicker skull plate in between those antlers as opposed to a young doe. This is going to simulate if you're actually in a stand and a deer is right underneath you and you shoot straight down on his head. Let's see what happens. Wow. That force shaft, actually, I missed the skull. I just glanced off of it. I was trying to aim for down here. It was just a little high and to the left. I actually just hit soft tissue. I can feel it. Okay, just pulled that stone point out. Really no damage done to it, just a ding off the tip. Still usable, and that haft is still tight. I just tried to wiggle the stone point. You can see it's not moving. But I did miss the skull, so we're going to try another shot. Okay. I thought I hit the skull. Absolutely splintered the damn arrow, though, that foreshaft. No cut skin, no anything, and the foreshaft was shattered and no stone points. So just stick another one in there. We're going to shoot it again. Well, I can tell that arrow was a glancing strike. It only hit the side of the skull. Damn it. Another glancing hit. One of the problems I'm having is the angle that my arrow is hitting that skull. Because it's a rounded target, I have to hit right dead center in order to get this arrowhead to punch through the bone. It just keeps hitting off the side of the skull and glancing off. And also, I think I'm coming in a little bit too far forward, and I'm trying to stay away from those antlers. So I've turned the head upside down a little bit. So now my shot angle will be a little bit coming more from behind, and I think that'll hit the back portion of the skull a little bit better. I'm gonna give it a shot. Another glancing hit. Okay, now that damaged that stone point. We took probably three or four shots with that one, and that one is now out of commission. You can see, look at, there's, looks like a little bit of bone, sawdust or bone, ground bone in there from that. Yeah, nothing wrong with it. Try it again. No, I missed the skull again off the back of it. God dang it. Okay, that point is out of commission. That was actually one made out of a thinner flake, so it didn't have the durability, and it definitely hit something hard in there and broke the point. Tell you, the old people really were geniuses. These four-shafted arrows that they make are great. You can just take that old point out, slide a new one in, you're ready to go. I just hitting off to the side. I'm all around it, but I just got to hit right on the peak of that crest. Give it another shot. Damn it! Man, still soft tissue. I'll tell you what though, that thing is still in that haft as tight as though I used epoxy. Broke the stone point. Okay, I've switched to a smaller deer head. It's actually a button buck, so it's a yearling deer. I'm just getting real tired of trying to shoot past those damn spike antlers on that other buck's skull. So we're gonna try this one and see if maybe I can get a little better hit with it. Right in there that time. Oh, that's definitely in the skull, but I'm actually able to pull it out. Partially, anyway. Oh, it's definitely in the brain. No doubt. Oh, I see brain matter there. There's no doubt about it. On that young deer, that point would have killed him instantly. I wonder how that would fared against that bone. Oh. It broke the base. The base of that point is still in there, but still in the haft. Man, it just goes to show you how strong that pine sap glue is. It's still held in there. Well, there's no doubt about it. That point punched right through the skull and was definitely in the brain in that young deer's skull. For some reason, it just wouldn't make it through the... I couldn't get a good shot on the big deer, but on that smaller deer, it was able to just run right through that bone and broke the point. But it's still inside his brain case. Wow. Maybe we'll do one more shot on him. I've changed the angle on that button buck skull. I've laid it down so that when I shoot, I'm actually going to be shooting into the back of his skull in more of a forward angle, as though he were out in front of me and then we're shooting down on him from behind. So we'll see how it works this time. Ooh. Boy, that one went in there. And there's the little button. And his brain is right behind there, and that definitely is in there. I'd say it's... Wow. I mean, it's in there deep. That is definitely a lethal hit. And that foreshaft is probably at least twice that long. And it's still embedded in his skull. It's got to probably went all the way through the brain. I'd say it'd be buried on the far side of the skull, on the inside. I won't be able to tell until I skin this thing out and deflesh it. Okay, we're going to end this test with a big, heavy buck skull to see where his antlers have been sawed off. I'm going to try to do the same angle I did on that last one, where I'm shooting in from behind and hitting the top of the skull. I don't know how well this is going to work though, because we were having trouble with that other skull, but we'll give it a shot. I wanted to hit right there. That's where I was aiming. I hit a little bit behind. A little low. That's okay. You know what? I'm going to leave that foreshaft in. Do another shot. I lied. I just tried to pull that stone point and it came out. Just a ding to the tip, but it's still very securely in that haft. I'm going to resharpen it and shoot it again. Now that thing went right underneath the antler, and it's in there. Oh man, it's in that skull. I'm gonna leave that foreshaft in there. Dead center that time. Now that is cool. Look at that stone point embedded in the skull. Yeah, it's in there. Not super hard though. No, actually, it's kind of loose. I see what's happening. When that stone point hits that hard bone, it's actually acting as a wedge and splitting the foreshaft. That's the problem. It's not bringing the full energy of the arrow to bear onto that stone point. So actually, it turns out, looks like the weakest part of this whole thing is the foreshaft itself. Okay, this is the last stone point I've got. All the other ones have been damaged or broken, or they're embedded in deer skulls. So I'm going to try a different angle on this one. I'm going to shoot from the side. Actually try to hit kind of behind the ear back here on this large, heavy buck skull. Ooh, nice shot. Finally having a little bit of success. That point, it's embedded in that skull, there's no doubt about it. That was probably the best shot of all of them.
It turns out this one shot on the mature buck skull did hit the skull, but just barely poked a hole in the inside of the skull. That was the only shot that could have possibly been lethal on this animal. But it turns out the young button buck skull was no match for the stone points. After the flesh decayed off the button buck skull for 2 months, I could see the full scope of what those arrows did. The first shot easily pierced the top of the skull, went through the brain and hit the bottom of the brain case and broke out the bottom of the skull. Unfortunately, that stone point was lost and never recovered. The second shot penetrated the skull, cut through the right side of the brain, exited the brain case, continued behind the eye, and finally embedded the stone point into the area where the roots of the rear molars grow. Both of these shots would have been instantly lethal on a living deer. But glancing hits proved the biggest problem, and those few hits that were right on split the foreshaft instantly, detaching the stone point from the arrow. Once that happened, any forward momentum of the arrow was irrelevant since it was no longer imparting that force into the stone point. This multifaceted test also tested the durability of stone points when impacting heavy bone, as well as testing the strength of the primitive hafting materials. Pine sap and deer sinew is a surprisingly strong hafting combination. They held the stone points very securely even when hitting heavy bone. Of course, these materials didn't hold tight every time, but it did surprisingly well for most of the shots. The stone points proved quite durable, with most surviving several shots before being damaged or broken. In conclusion, stick with the traditional behind-the-shoulder shots with primitive bows for your best chance at a quick kill with minimal chances of wounding.